My guest is Suzanne Bigelow. I met Suzanne years ago, and I said to her a minute ago, when we were kids, about a decade ago, she and I crossed paths, and we continue to try to find excuses to share ideas. She is somebody who I think can show us a pathway of mindfulness and where it's come from and where it's heading. Suzanne, thank you for being with us. Now, what's the name of your company at this time?
The name of my company this time is the Iosis Collective. And what the heck does that mean?
Sure.
Iosis is the last stage in alchemic transformation.
Go through that again. The last phase of what?
Alchemic transformation. So alchemy is the study of transitioning from lead to gold.
Okay.
And it's an ancient
Nice.
academic study of how things transform.
So you're
in
leveraging
nature.
the word change in there. You're changing something from what it is to what it could be, intentionally changing it.
And it's more than change, because change can be putting a different hat on the donkey in the middle of the room, if you will. Transformation is different. That's where you're actually changing the molecular composition or the very fabric of an organization.
And you understand that we're using this discussion in potentially several different classes, including the aging mind. And one of the things that we teach in the aging mind is the history of neuroplasticity, rewiring the brain. And with that in mind, we're going to be getting into areas, I know today, about how you've seen in your years of working in the field of mindfulness and meditation and having people understand the ability to actually rewire the brain. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
All
Yeah,
right.
my landing in the field of mindfulness or meditation was very
You
much
held
through the
quotes
back.
there.
I
We're gonna-
did. It's, so I came through the back door through the study of physical yoga asana, which is one way to learn to pay attention. And if the study of mindfulness is about paying attention on purpose, those lineages stem from several different traditions, contemplative traditions. So I get concerned about co-opting a word that has so many different meanings and has gained such incredible popularity. So I like to just use the quotes there to make sure that we know there's a gray area we're talking about there.
That's right. And isn't it a dynamic field that was one thing and then it's changing in and it's moving to a new level of awareness within the public. And we're going to be having your ideas of where do you think it's going to go. I'm going to unwind this back to the beginning of how did you get to this field, and were you always involved in meditation and mindfulness from the beginning of your career?
It's funny, I remember Kelly McGonigal is sort of a high flyer in the world of neuroplasticity and meditation. I remember hearing her speak at a conference probably 8 years ago now, and she said, people don't end up doing this work because you wake up one day and you're already enlightened. Most of the people doing this work are doing it for a reason, and a very personal one, and that's certainly the case with my own exploration into mind-body study. When I was 23 years old, on the way to work, January 2nd, 1986, I had a near-death car accident that left me with both ankles snapped in half, put me in a wheelchair for about a year. And because I was young and athletic, it took me a while to figure it out, but the body that I got left with was not the same body that I went into that with. And so I ended up, walking away from a career in marketing in IBM to take care of my body and start a family. And that's really where I was exposed to the study of yoga as a way to take care and balance what's a kind of a high sensitivity physical structure. And I had no idea that the 20 years I was spending figuring out whether or not my right big toe mound was rotating externally or internally was really training my brain to pay attention in a new way.
So you were, because of that challenge that wasn't expected and it wasn't intentional, you were figuring out your own path of connecting your brain with your body-mind connection. So during that time, you were in the trenches and didn't really understand what was going on. Then after you had understood from your own personal challenge, what happened next?
Well, you're right. I started the practice because I had a grumpy body and I didn't have a choice and I couldn't do any of the things I used to like to do. But then as my body began to change and my awareness began to shift, I realized that this paying attention and the connection to mind and body gave me like a new skill set for self-managing my own experience, and that the biggest lever in that whole system is located right between my own two ears.
So it came to you that, hey, I'm doing this because I'm paying attention and making incremental smidgens of progress that accumulate. So eventually you're making huge differences, but over longer periods of time.
Well, you don't realize as you're going to that yoga studio 3, 4, 5 times a week at an hour and a half a crack and doing study in India for months at a time and so on, that what I was essentially doing was turning up the volume on my own perceptivity and discernment, which is really what we're talking about with mindfulness. It's slowing down and connecting with mind and body, stepping out of the fray of what's right in front of you and being able to watch yourself. And it was such a powerful tool for myself to be able to go, wow, you know, am I tired, or should I be wearing different shoes, or that's not a good chair for me to sit in for 4 hours. Whatever, all of that paying attention that was benefiting me, I thought there's a whole lot of people that are never going to show up in a yoga studio or a meditation hall that could really benefit from this, including my friends in the corporate world and my growing teenagers and all the rest of it. So
as it slowly came to you that this is something that you understand, what was the first step to actually go out and help others, to make a difference for others?
Well, I was inspired by a guy by the name of Dr. Richard Miller, who's a clinical psychologist and longtime yoga therapist. He was speaking at, I believe, the same conference Kelly McGonigal was at, and he was talking about his research out of Walter Reed Hospital with a particular protocol that he had developed, and he was doing research on PTSD. And what was exciting to me was that the protocol he was using was based on the practice of Yoga Nidra, which is a meditative yoga practice. So after you've done all those physical postures, you sit down and you work internally. And it was exciting to me that he was using a yoga practice that really resonated with me and the study that I've done, but he was doing it outside of the studio in a way that really made a wider difference in the world, and that's what inspired me. And his protocol then became the framework that I used for my corporate mindfulness offerings.
So as you're exposing yourself with the knowledge over that 2-year period, and then the additional training you took, and really embedding yourself in the field of mindfulness and meditation and yoga, and we'll get to those words in another segment, but at that point you were looking for a place where you could actually help other people, and especially in the corporate world. That's where you came from IBM.
Yep.
Now, after the accident, you're returning back to the corporate world. Then what happened?
Well, it was interesting. My first visitation into the corporate world was through the wellness door. There's a lot of interest in stress reduction in the workplace. And I was experimenting along with my students at PGE and Standard Insurance and figuring out how much time worked and how much yoga type language worked. And so it was a period of refinement. And it was lovely. I ended up feeling like many of my colleagues now that have done corporate mindfulness on the wellness side, some limited effectiveness. I would come in and I would help people to feel better, but they didn't necessarily have the support to then continue to practice outside of the classroom to build that bi-directional mind-body connection and actually shift the way the brain functions and the nervous system functions.
And that was about how many years ago when you first started trying to figure out?
It was about 5 years ago that I first brought the yoga-based mindfulness into the workplace through the wellness path. Did that for about 2 years and then partnered with an organization out of Denmark to provide corporate-based mindfulness training. And hats off to those folks at the Potential Project. They have done a fabulous job of scaling the practice down to something that's very doable in the workplace, about 10 minutes a day. And then they tie the skills of attention and awareness that are cultivated in the training directly to the tasks that the people are performing in the workplace. So it's a much stickier application, if you will, of the skills of mindfulness. But again, without a bigger corporate container, sometimes you have lit up those neurons and change the way those brains are functioning, but you throw them right back out into the pond that they're swimming in, and it's a difficult
So sustainability becomes the big issue.
Yes, we'll talk about it more, I'm sure, when we talk about how mindfulness works, but there's a real difference between exposing people to the idea that slowing down is helpful and you can shift the nervous system by changing the way you breathe, and there is this capacity to step out of the fray and be responsive instead of reactive, but to actual change or transformation, you actually have to put some time and elbow grease into it. Mindfulness training, you actually have to exercise different neural pathways to change brain function. And then within a wider organization, you need to have enough support that you then roll that out as a fundamental way of being.
So it's really an investment from the decision makers that the time spent in a sustainable program in increments that are not a weekend and that's it, but that investment in time is one that I know science has shown that it pays off in handsome dividends by having more production, fewer errors, and that's, I think, the future of corporate buy-in to the field of reducing stress, but also focusing creativity, the ability to recharge or to tune out for a moment and then tune in to the next project you've got or the next challenge. Okay, we're going to take a break and then we're going to get into some really good stuff.
All right, I'm there.